Well, good morning. It's Thursday, and today we look at Matthew 23, verses 1 through 12. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do, for they preach, but they do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. And they love the place of honor at feasts and the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by others. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Neither be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ. The greatest among you shall be your servant, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." Okay, so here Jesus begins a sustained attack on the Pharisees that lasts over most of this chapter. He complains that they don't do what they say to do. Now, the Pharisees tried to fence the law. So suppose that we had a roadway and we knew that if you went 50 miles an hour on that roadway, it would be dangerous. So what's the speed limit going to be? Well, if 50 is too dangerous, if we set the speed limit at 30, no one's ever going to go 50, right? And so they would do things like that. They would set the boundary so far away from the actual need of the law that it just became ridiculous. For instance, and this is, I think, a true one, you weren't allowed to plow on Sunday or on the Sabbath, the seventh day, so Saturday. You weren't allowed to plow your field. Now, if you spit on the ground, where the spittle hits the dirt, it makes a little furrow. And so if you spit, that would be plowing. And so you weren't allowed to spit on the Sabbath and this kind of thing. And so it became almost ridiculous. But these are the kind of rules that the Pharisees made, and they imposed on the people. And Jesus says, they're not willing to do anything, but they want you to do all these fairly ridiculous things. So don't pay attention to what they do, because they're not doing it. They want their phylacteries broad. The phylactery is that little box that they would strap onto their arm with this long ribbon sort of things, in which they had a tiny little copy of the Ten Commandments. They like their fringes long. They had these robes with fringes, and the law tells them how to make the fringe. Well, they had their fringes extra long. And they loved the places of honor. They loved to be called rabbi, teacher. And Jesus says, you don't call them rabbi. You have one teacher. That's me. He goes on to say, don't call anyone father. You have one Father. That's the Lord God. And don't call anyone instructor. You have one instructor. Again, that's me. So, now, I have heard people complain and ridicule the Catholics for forever because they call their priest father. Well, so do they do the same thing in the Orthodox Church, which in my mind goes further back than the Roman Catholics and back to the beginning. And some other churches do that. I don't think they're disobeying Jesus. I think he's on a roll here. Don't call them rabbi. Don't call them father. Don't call them anything. They are not the ones who are in charge of you, he's saying. Those who want to be greatest should be your servants, and they're not your servants. So the ones who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So what Jesus is saying here is just basically to the people to ignore these Pharisees and humble yourselves and follow me. That's good advice. Let's do that, all right? And we will see you tomorrow morning.